I didn't even pack my own bags. He did. 2 garbage bags. One with my clothes, mostly wrinkled hoodies and 2 pairs of jeans. The other had my guitar case stuffed inside, like it was trash. I watched him do it, methodical, silent, like he was taking out the recycling. When he finished, he opened the front door and didn't look at me. "If you're gonna live like a street musician," he said, still not looking, "go live on the street." That was it. No yelling. No big fight. Just those words and the screen door bouncing shut behind him with a hollow click. I stood on the porch, hands in my pockets, pretending not to be stunned. My fingers wrapped around a small silver pick I kept in my hoodie. I'd had it since middle school. My mom got it for me at some music shop when I'd played in the school talent show. Said, "You'll need this when you go on tour one day." I still carried it everywhere. I was holding it so tightly now it hurt. Mom stood inside the house, arms crossed over her stomach. She didn't say a word, just stood behind the glass door like she was trapped behind it. Her eyes flicked up to mine for half a second, then dropped again. She didn't come out. She didn't hug me goodbye. She just watched. I picked up the bags. And I left. The first night, I crashed on my friend Cam's couch. His apartment was small, smelled like weed and old pizza, and the air mattress I slept on had a slow leak. I kept waking up with my back on the floor. Cam was chill about it, though. One of the only people who didn't ask a million questions. "Your dad's always been like that," he said, tossing me a beer. "It's not on you." I wanted to believe him, but I kept replaying it in my head, the look on my dad's face. That flat, disappointed silence. Like I wasn't even worth getting angry at anymore. I stayed there for 3 nights. Then one of Cam's roommates gave me that look, "You know the one," and I knew it was time to go. After that, it was public parks. The back of a closed-down gas station. An occasional stranger's couch, but never more than once. I kept my guitar on me at all times, half out of necessity, half because it felt like the only piece of home I had left. The silver pick never left my hoodie pocket. I played every day. Outside coffee shops, bus stops, art fairs. Anywhere that didn't shoo me off. I mostly did covers, Fleetwood Mac, Tracy Chapman, a little Bon Iver when I was feeling bold. People liked the sad stuff. They didn't always tip, but they paused. Looked, felt something. I wasn't making much, but enough to eat. Dollar menu dinners. Gas station coffee that tasted like burnt cardboard. I once made $37 in one day and felt like a millionaire. There was this one morning, mid-October, when the sun was finally out after 3 straight days of rain. I sat up outside a little cafe in downtown Jacksonville, playing something slow and moody, just kind of letting the chords happen. I wasn't even thinking. That's when I saw her. Blonde ponytail, oversized hoodie, iced latte in one hand, phone in the other. She stopped walking and just stared at me. Like, full on, not blinking kind of staring. "You're really good," she said when I finished. I gave her a half smile, the kind that hides tired. "Thanks." She pointed to her phone. "Can I post this? I run a little TikTok thing. Might get you some attention." I shrugged. "Sure. Why not?" Honestly, I forgot about her 10 minutes later. The next morning, I woke up in the stairwell of a building I wasn't technically allowed to be in. Checked my phone. For missed calls. 12 unread messages. Instagram blowing up. That girl's video? 120,000 views. By noon, it was at 300K. Comments flooded in. People asking for my name, if I had Spotify, where they could send money. I stared at the screen like it belonged to someone else. One DM stood out. Reese. Said he was a producer based out in Austin. Said he helped young indie artists get discovered, that he'd never heard tone like mine before. Asked if I had time to talk. I wanted to believe it was bullshit. Probably was. But I also hadn't eaten in 24 hours, and the idea of someone seeing something in me? I messaged back. He offered to fly me out. Said he had a small studio, nothing fancy, but a good team. "We'll cover your ticket. You just bring the guitar and show up." The guitar. That was easy. Bringing me was the hard part. But I did it. The Greyhound ride to Austin was brutal. 18 hours. A baby cried behind me the entire time. My seammate chewed sunflower seeds and spat them into a plastic cup. I didn't sleep. Just stared out the window and gripped the pick in my hoodie pocket like a tether. I kept thinking, this is it. This is the part of the story where things turn around. I should have known better. Reese met me outside the station in a black SUV that smelled like new leather and expensive cologne. He had on a backwards cap, designer sneakers, and the kind of 2 white teeth that either meant money or insecurity. Maybe both. "Travis, right?" he said, flashing that PR smile. I nodded, wiped my hands on my jeans. Yeah, thanks for coming. He tossed my duffel into the back. You hungry? Let's get food. You look like you haven't eaten since Florida. I hadn't. My stomach growled loud enough to answer for me. We went to this taco truck on the east side, picnic tables under string lights, people drinking Topo Chicos and trying to look effortlessly cool. Reese ordered for both of us without asking. I didn't care. The food tasted like a meal I didn't have to earn, which made it even better. As we ate, he talked nonstop. About how raw I was. How authentic my sound felt. How tired the industry was of overproduced garbage, and how artists like me were what labels were looking for now. I listened, nodded, tried to keep up. But something felt off. Like he was reading from a pitch he'd used 100 times before, just swapping out the name. Still, when you've been invisible long enough, any attention starts to feel like love. That night, he drove me to a motel, one of those neon sign joints with the vacancy flickering like it was running out of breath. He handed me a key and said we'd hit the studio in the morning. I'll cover the room, he said. Don't stress it. Just rest. The walls were thin. The sheets smelled like industrial soap. I took a shower just to feel human again and dried off with a towel that felt like sandpaper. I sat on the bed with my guitar across my lap and the silver pick between my fingers, flipping it over and over like a coin. I wasn't sure if I was nervous or excited. Probably both. But mostly, I was exhausted from pretending I wasn't terrified. I barely slept. Reese picked me up at 10 a.m. sharp and drove us to what he called a hybrid studio space. It looked like an old converted storage unit. Inside wasn't much better, beat-up couches, tangled cords, a cracked monitor glowing weakly in the corner. My stomach sank a little. I tried to tell myself it didn't matter. That some of the best music in the world was made in crappy rooms with no air conditioning and duct-taped mics. I'd heard stories. But this didn't feel like that kind of room. He introduced me to his engineer, a guy named Troy who wore aviator sunglasses inside and didn't say more than 10 words to me. His handshake was limp and sticky. He reeked of weed and Red Bull. Still, I played. I sang 3 originals. Did 2 takes each. No direction. No feedback. Just Troy half listening while scrolling his phone, and Reese pacing like he was already bored. After an hour, Reese clapped his hands once and said, "All right. Let's talk next steps." That's when the pitch changed. He handed me a 1-page contract. Said it was light paperwork, just to formalize our collab. I read it, or tried to. Half of it was vague filler about promotional rollout and distribution prep. Then I saw it, a $1,200 artist onboarding fee. I looked up. Wait, what is this? Reese gave a rehearsed smile. Just a startup cost. Covered studio time, playlist placement, our in-house visuals. Standard stuff. My chest tightened. You said this was a collaboration. You never said anything about money. I am collaborating, he said. I'm fronting the exposure, my network, the entire platform. You think that's free? I didn't respond. Just kept staring at the paper. My hand instinctively moved to my hoodie pocket. I felt the outline of the silver pick. Pressed it hard against my palm. I don't have $1,200, I said finally. He shrugged, like that wasn't his problem. Well, that's unfortunate. Something in his tone made my stomach churn. Not angry. Not disappointed. Dismissive. Like he'd already moved on to the next kid. I left. Walked back to the motel in silence, guitar on my back. Hoodie pulled up even though it was hot as hell. I felt humiliated. Used. Stupid. Like I'd handed someone my dream and they'd spit in it, then charged me for the cleanup. Back in the room, I sat on the edge of the bed and pulled the silver pick from my pocket. I stared at it. The edges were worn now. One corner was bent a little, but it still caught the light in this soft, familiar way. I remembered the day Mom gave it to me. I was 13. She'd wrapped it in tissue paper and hidden it in my lunchbox. I found it at school and thought it was a mistake, thought maybe it was for Dad. But on the back, in tiny etching, it said, "Play brave." I didn't cry. Not then. But I did something I hadn't done in weeks. I played. Not for tips. Not for followers. Not for studio time or contracts. Just for me. I sat cross-legged on that shitty motel carpet, barefoot, hunched over my guitar, and played every chord like it was a lifeline. No one heard. No one clapped. But for the first time in a long time, I felt like me again. I fell asleep with the guitar still across my chest. And when I woke up, the message was waiting. The message came in at 6:41 a.m. I hadn't even fully woken up, Just that half sleep where your brain's still foggy and your body aches from sleeping in clothes. I was curled on top of the covers, guitar digging into my ribs, silver pick still clutched in my fingers like it had been protecting me in the night. The notification buzzed softly. I rubbed my eyes, picked up my phone, and saw the message. At Mike Drums 23, yo man, is this you? It was a link. TikTok. I clicked it. And there I was playing Fast Car outside that cafe in Jacksonville. My voice a little hoarse, a dog barking in the background, but the sound was clear. There was a warmth in it I hadn't heard in myself for a while. The video had over 400,000 views. I blinked. Refreshed. 421K. Then I saw the username at Travestry at music_fan. And the bio, run by Lil Sis Blackheart, support my brother's dream. My stomach dropped. I sat up so fast the guitar fell off my lap and thudded against the floor. Claire. It was Claire. I stared at the screen like it might disappear if I blinked. She'd posted everything. Videos from months ago. Clips of me playing near the beach, outside gas stations, on rainy sidewalks. Some were clearly filmed from a distance. Others had been reposted from random strangers who'd tagged me. She'd found them all, curated them, captioned them with lyrics, and pinned a video where I smiled at the end and said, "Thanks for listening," like I knew she'd be watching. I felt a sharp sting behind my eyes. I hadn't talked to her in months. Not since the day I left. I remember how quiet she was that morning. She was at the kitchen table, doing homework, headphones in. She didn't say goodbye. I didn't either. She was only 14, but that day, she looked older somehow. Harder. Like she already knew what the rest of us were too scared to admit, that I wasn't coming back. I messaged the account, fingers shaking. Me. Claire? No answer. I waited 10 minutes. Then 20. Checked again. Nothing. I showered, packed my bag, paced the room. Finally, I called her. She picked up on the second ring. Hello. Her voice cracked a little, like she didn't trust it was real. It's me, I said. Trev. Silence. Then, a sharp inhale, and a rushed, oh my God. Oh my God. Are you okay? Where are you? I sat back down on the edge of the bed. Stared at the wall. It was stained yellow near the ceiling, like time had collected there. I'm in Austin. Kind of in the middle of nowhere, honestly. Why didn't you call me? She said, and now she sounded mad. Her voice wobbled. You just disappeared. You didn't even text. I didn't know if you were. I know, I said quickly. I know. I'm sorry. I didn't want to make it harder for you. She sniffed. That's not how it works. And that wrecked me. We talked for over an hour. She told me about school. How it sucked. How Mom barely spoke about me, like saying my name would break something. How Dad just acted like I never existed. I caught him deleting photos from the hallway, she said, voice low. What? The one from your 8th grade recital. And the one of us at that lake trip. I closed my eyes. Pressed my thumb to the edge of the pick in my pocket until it left a mark. He pretended they were old and dusty. Said they didn't fit the aesthetic. I let out a hollow laugh. He said that. Yeah. Like our house is a magazine spread. Silence settled between us for a moment. Then she said, but I knew. I knew he missed you. I didn't answer. Because he listened to your videos, she added. All the time. When no one was home. I caught him once, just sitting at the kitchen table. You were playing that song, the one about sitting in the car and not going inside. Driveway. Yeah, she whispered. That one. After the call, I walked for a long time. Didn't even realize where I was going until I heard it. A saxophone. Soft, slow, aching. I turned a corner, and there he was, same streetlight, same stance, same beat-up case open by his feet. Billy. He glanced at me mid-phrase, didn't stop playing. Just raised an eyebrow like, there you are. I sat on the curb without asking. We played. Me on guitar, him on sax. For no one but the street and a few passing cars. After an hour, he lit a cigarette and leaned back against the pole. You look different, he said, exhaling smoke through his nose. I looked down at my shoes. I found something. He nodded. Good. Maybe now you'll stop playing like the world's ending. I thought it was. He glanced sideways at me, eyes soft. It's not. Not yet. That night, I got another DM. From a guy named Micah. Blue checkmark. Said he was with a small indie label in Nashville. Said he saw Claire's video. Called my voice real and sore in the right places. Said, I've heard thousands of unsigned kids. You're not like them. You've got ghosts in your courts. I didn't even know what that meant. But it felt true. I showed the message to Billy. He took a drag off his cigarette, studied the screen, then handed it back. Answer it, he said. I hesitated. You think it's legit? He gave me a look. Does it matter? And in that moment, it didn't. The flight to Nashville was the cheapest one Micah could find. Middle seat, 6 a.m., no carry-on. I hadn't flown before. I spent most of the ride gripping my guitar case like turbulence could steal it from me. My right hand kept dipping into my hoodie pocket, rubbing the edge of that silver pick like it was a prayer. It was still warm from my palm by the time we landed. Micah met me at the airport with a cardboard sign that said Travis in Sharpie. He was younger than I expected, late 20s. Wore a beanie despite it being warm out, and held his coffee like he was afraid someone might steal it. You look exactly like your voice sounds, he said as we shook hands. I blinked. Thanks. He laughed. No, I mean raw. Quiet. A little messed up. But honest. That was probably the nicest thing anyone's ever said to me. The studio was in this renovated house on the east side, one of those neighborhoods where you couldn't tell if the street was getting gentrified or just holding on. Inside smelled like incense and coffee. Foam padding on the walls. Mics everywhere. Some vintage, some duct taped. A cat named Bowie lounged on a windowsill and didn't even flinch when I walked in. Micah introduced me to Ray, the producer. She was sharp. Didn't smile much. Wore black boots and red lipstick and a necklace with a single piano key on it. Play me something unpolished, she said. So I did. I sat on a stool in the middle of the room and played Driveway. My voice cracked in the second verse. I forgot the bridge halfway through and had to loop back. My hands were shaking. When I finished, she didn't say anything for a few seconds. Then, okay, don't touch that arrangement. We're recording that exactly like this. We recorded for 10 days straight. Slept on couches. Ate ramen and studio snacks. Ray pushed me hard, made me redo takes until my throat hurt, made me listen back to my own voice and hear what she heard. I hated it. Then I loved it. Then I hated it again. That's how I knew I was doing it right. Micah moved through the space like a conductor without a baton. Connecting people, checking levels, quietly defending me when someone questioned a lyric or a vocal choice. This kid doesn't need polish, he said one night, standing outside while we smoked in silence. He needs a flashlight. I didn't ask what he meant. I was too tired, but I wrote it down later, just in case. 2 days before the EP was finished, my phone buzzed. Claire, Mom saw your video. She cried, then left the room. Dad watched the whole thing. Didn't say anything. I didn't know what to say to that, so I didn't reply. Instead, I scrolled through the fan account Claire had built, which now had over 20,000 followers. People were using my lyrics in their own videos. One girl in Minnesota had gotten a tattoo of the words parked but never still. That was a throwaway line from a song I wrote half asleep at a bus stop. It didn't make sense. None of it did. But it felt like momentum. The day the EP dropped, I played a small showcase at a club in East Nashville, maybe 60 people. Industry folks. Friends. A few real fans who'd driven in from out of town. Billy showed up. I still don't know how he got there. He just texted me, back door. Don't ask. When I walked out on stage, Claire was in the front row, next to her mom. I froze when I saw her. Literally stopped mid-step. The mic was 2 feet away, and I couldn't move. She gave me this tiny nod. Barely a movement. But it said, I'm here. I stayed. I walked to the mic and took a deep breath. Then I pulled the silver pick from my pocket and held it up like a toast. Some of you already know this story, I said. And if you don't, that's okay. You'll get it. And then I played Driveway. After the show, I found them backstage. Claire was buzzing. Hugged me so hard my ribs cracked. She had mascara under her eyes and didn't care. Mom didn't speak right away. She just looked at me. Really looked. Not like I was a stranger or a mistake or some memory she was trying to forget. Just me. I listened to everything, she said, voice quiet. All of it. The TikTok account. The live clips. I didn't know you sounded like that. My throat was tight. I didn't know you were hurting like that. I looked down. My hands were shaking. Then she reached into her purse and handed me something folded. A piece of notebook paper. Old. Soft around the edges. I recognized the handwriting immediately. I wasn't going to give you this, she said. I almost threw it away after you died. It was a letter. From Dad. I didn't open the letter right away. We went back to the motel Claire and Mom were staying at, just for the night. It was cleaner than the one in Austin. They had 2 beds, white sheets that didn't feel like sandpaper, and a little microwave with a blinking clock stuck at 2:17. Mom fell asleep first, back to me, still in her jeans. Claire stayed up scrolling on her phone, earbuds in, quietly mouthing lyrics to some song I couldn't hear. I sat in the motel chair by the window with the letter in my lap. I turned it over a few times. It was folded like he used to fold napkins, sharp, tight creases. One corner tucked in. There was no name on it. Just the paper. Yellowed slightly. Smelled faintly of his aftershave. Or maybe that was my memory lying to me. My fingers hovered over the edge. Then I unfolded it. Travis. I don't know how to start this, which is probably why I didn't say it to your face. When I was your age, I played drums in a garage band. We sucked, but we were loud, and for a while that was enough. My mom, your grandma, hated it. Said music was for people who didn't want to work. So I stopped. I joined the army because it made sense. It was clean, structured, predictable, but I still dreamed about it. I'd hear a song on the radio and imagine what our version would have sounded like. Bad, probably, but ours. So when I saw you playing, really playing, something broke open in me. I didn't know how to be proud and scared at the same time. So I chose scared. And then I made it look like anger. Because anger's easier to manage. You got the part of me I buried. And I punished you for it. That's on me. I don't know if I'll ever understand the kind of courage it takes to go all in on something that fragile. But if that's what this letter is, then I guess I'm trying. I'm proud of the noise you made. Dad. I didn't cry. Not at first. I just sat there, holding that letter like it might dissolve if I blinked too hard. The words I'm proud rang in my head, over and over, in a voice I couldn't hear anymore. I thought about the night I left. The silence. The weight of those garbage bags. How I'd held that pick in my pocket like it was the last part of me worth saving. He'd written this before I even stepped out the door. He just couldn't say it out loud. The next morning, I played one last song before Mom and Claire left for the airport. We were in the motel room, me sitting on the edge of the bed, hair still wet from the shower, voice barely awake. Claire requested Driveway, of course. But halfway through, I stopped. I don't even know why. My fingers just froze. My chest felt tight, but not like panic, more like something was too full to keep going. I can't, I said. Claire looked confused. Why not? I handed her the pick. She frowned. Wait, seriously? Yeah. I smiled, though my throat ached. You've been carrying my songs this whole time. You should carry this too. She looked at it like it was made of glass. Then she reached over and hugged me without a word. 2 weeks later, the label put out a vinyl of the EP. Limited release. There's a small etching on the inside ring, barely noticeable. It says, Play Brave. Every time I hold a new pick, I still check my pocket for the old one. Reflex. Like muscle memory from a version of me that doesn't fully exist anymore. Sometimes, when the crowd's quiet just before I start, I whisper the letter to myself. I'm proud of the noise you made. Not because I need to hear it, but because I don't want to forget what it took to finally believe it.